I was holding a pumpkin pie in one hand and my mother's doorknob in the other when my sister blocked the entry with a careful smile that never reached her eyes. She whispered that the family had already sat, that the table was tight, that my dress color clashed with their palette, and that I might want to take the pie home because it was best if I didn't come in this year. I thought she was joking until she said the quiet part out loud, that I didn't look good next to her new boyfriend in photos, and this Thanksgiving was also their brand shoot. I laughed in that horseway grief sometimes sounds when it puts on a mask of humor, and I waited for Mom to appear behind her shoulder and say this had gone too far. Mom didn't come. The hall smelled like sage butter and cinnamon and the kind of warmth I used to believe could anchor a person to a place. My sister angled her phone like a mirror and showed me a mock-up of their seating chart with a beige mood board and the caption rustic elegance. There was no place card with my name. She said I could swing by later for leftovers, maybe around 8, after they had captured the family portraits for the charity newsletter and Instagram carousel. I heard flatware chime against plates and my stepfather's laugh ricochet like a coin across the dining room, and I remembered being 11 and tracing the whorls of this same doorknob, waiting to be called to the table when adults finished the polite part of their fight. My sister adjusted the silk bow in her hair and explained that her boyfriend's company had an image to uphold, that investors were watching, that my look was a little corporate severe and might overshadow his approachable star-up vibe. I asked where Mom was and my sister glanced back into the house the way you glance into a room where you've hid something fragile and hope it doesn't roll out. She said Mom was resting, that it had been a long morning, that we shouldn't stress her because this year's theme meant a lot to her. I looked down at the pumpkin pie I had baked at 5 a.m. with the recipe card our grandmother wrote before her hands shook too much to make perfect cursive, and I understood I had been demoted from daughter to variable. My sister used the word optics. She said, just for the pictures, just for the story, just for the feed. She took a half step forward and touched my sleeve like a stylist smoothing a wrinkle, and she told me I'd thank her later. I asked her the boyfriend's last name again because in every text she sent this week, he was just Gabriel, like he was a flavor of candle. She said it slowly, a different last name than the one on the resume I had scanned in a shortlist yesterday afternoon, and I watched her eyes when she said it. She did not blink. I nodded in the way people nod when they catalog a minor discrepancy and tell themselves it is not a fault line. She kissed the air near my cheek and said we'd talk tonight, and the door clicked shut with that soft apology new weather stripping makes. I stood there for a breath and another, and I wasn't sure if it was the cold or the old feeling that my family's love had a dress code that made my hands tremble. I carried the pie back to the car the way a person carries a wrapped truth. On the drive home, I passed 3 houses with fold-out tables set in garages for overflow guests, teenagers in hoodies tossing a football over a minivan, a grandpa in a lawn chair carving a turkey with a headlamp. And for a second, I wanted to pull over and offer my pie to the first open door that believed food was for eating, not for staging. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert I had left myself, a gentle ping that said, "Review finalist candidates, R&D Ops, Monday 9 a.m., confidentiality strict." I silenced it, then unsilenced it, then stared at the preview of an email flagged high priority with an attachment named Addendum, Vendor Background Alignment, Gabriel L. The sender was our compliance officer. The subject line said, Identity clarification before offer. My first instinct was to drive to my apartment and cut the pie into large, inelegant slices and eat one standing by the sink. Instead, I parked in a quiet lot behind the community library where the Wi-Fi is strong even on holidays because teenagers sit in cars here to video call cousins who live too far to hug. I opened the email. The addendum explained that the finalist from the staffing partner had presented under a middle surname for brand continuity, but his legal last name matched another application we had on file from 6 months ago that didn't align with the non-compete he had signed at a competitor. The memo asked me to verify that he had no personal ties that could create a conflict of interest given that his girlfriend's family had a consulting arrangement with one of our subsidiaries, a detail I didn't know we had. The name of the girlfriend matched my sister's full legal name. The boyfriend wasn't just a finalist. He had been subcontracting on a pilot under a different umbrella and had CC'd himself with 2 different email aliases. The memo said his onboarding would eventually roll up under my division if we finalized the merger set to be announced next quarter. My hands stopped shaking. I read the memo twice. Then I scrolled to the bottom where compliance asked for a simple yes or no about any potential conflicts I might foresee given my role and any familial relationships of note. I stared at the field that said family ties, none declared, and tasted the metallic little laugh I had swallowed at the door. I didn't reply. Not yet. I closed the laptop and sat with the odd rushing quiet that comes when the story flips upside down and the pieces float for a beat before gravity remembers itself. I pictured my sister's careful hair and the way she said optics like a prayer someone taught her in a language she didn't speak at home. I considered the sweetness of not telling her. I considered the ugliness of telling her right now. I drove to a grocery store that was open until 2 for emergencies like forgotten cranberry sauce and broken hearts. I bought whipped cream and 2 small aluminum pans and a disposable pie server because I was done carrying heirlooms to places that treated them like props. Then I drove to the park near my apartment where the rec center keeps a free potluck for anyone who shows up with a dish or without. I set my pie on the folding table between mac and cheese that still bubbled and a green bean casserole with the crispy onions already softened by air. And a woman with a toddler thanked me in the specific way strangers thank you when you have given them exactly the thing they didn't know they missed. I ate a paper plate slice in the sun and thought of the seating chart where my name did not fit the palette. My mother texted at 3:12 with a heart and a turkey emoji and the words, "Wish you were here, sweetie. It's beautiful. We'll save you a slice." I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I called her. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail that began with Happy Thanksgiving and ended with I love you and contained nothing in between that could be used later as a weapon. At 4:05, my sister texted me a carousel of photos in which everyone matched and the turkey looked lacquered and the boyfriend's smile was the kind that had been practiced in Windows. I zoomed in and saw my mother's eyes shine the way they shine when she thinks chaos is finally tamed. My sister wrote, "See, you understand. It's about opportunities. G is meeting someone tonight who could change everything. Don't be weird. We'll FaceTime you later when the light is soft." I typed and erased 3 replies. At 6:47, the FaceTime came through and I answered because my mother's face is still a holiday. She held the phone at that angle mothers use to widen a room and narrow the distance. My sister leaned in and said we were on the way to the downtown hotel bar because investors liked neutral ground. She angled the phone to show her boyfriend, who lifted his glass and said my name like we were casual and old and kind. He used the middle surname again, and a story about growing up on the coast I knew was borrowed from the founder of the very startup he wanted us to buy. I asked him what he was most grateful for this year, and he said second chances with the sort of smile that tries to hold a mirror up to you. My mother said I should meet them for a nightcap if I felt like it, and my sister nodded vigorously like she was offering an olive branch. That matched the table's cape. I said maybe. I said text me the place. When the address pinged, I knew the bar, the one with the glass wall where the skyline looks like a screensaver. I changed my dress because it smelled like cinnamon and not like armor, and I walked the few blocks because walking gives you a way to arrive with your breath in order. The hostess recognized my sister from her exploding Instagram and led me to a table by the glass. My mother's eyes welled again like her body is a house built over a spring. My sister hugged me perfunctorily and smelled like figs and good intentions that would cut you. Her boyfriend stood and offered his hand with a slight bow like he had seen in a grooming tutorial. He said my name, first and last this time, correctly, and something like respect slid under his voice. I took the seat the hostess offered me and smiled at my mother so she could exhale. The sister did her performance of ease and told a story about how the photographer had captured authentic laughter, and my mother reached for my hand under the table as if she were checking the temperature of someone she forgot to bring inside. The boyfriend asked about my work with a tilt of his head that suggested curiosity could be a tactic. I asked him about his. He described his lean team and their innovation culture and how they were talking to a major player, and my sister squeezed his forearm in the way people squeeze fruit in a grocery store, checking for ripeness. He said they were in talks with a firm building a regional hub here soon. I asked which firm. He said he couldn't say yet, and then he said the name of my company while watching my sister watch me. My mother sipped her seltzer like it might turn into a different drink if she believed hard enough. I looked at him the way a person looks at a ship that has drifted close to a shore with rocks under the surface. I asked him to repeat the last name on his legal documents for the tab, and he did, and it matched the memorandum in my inbox. I said it was a small world in the way people say that when the world has shrunk to a needle. My sister asked if I knew anyone there, and I said a few people, and my mother's hand tightened on mine under the table because she knows the stages of my patience. The waiter set down drinks and my sister lifted her glass to gratitude and optics and all the doors that open when stories are told correctly. The boyfriend lifted his glass to partnerships. My mother didn't lift hers because she was looking at me like she was finally seeing the lock. I set my glass down without drinking. I told the boyfriend that my Monday would be busy and his might be too. He smiled in that way that asks if we're winking at the same secret. I let the silence become the fourth person at our table. My sister filled it with the sound of promises dressed as sentences. She said the investors loved authenticity and family and the narrative of hustle, and if we could all align our messaging, this could be big for all of us. She touched my wrist and said it softly, "Let's be strategic." I asked if strategic meant editing me out of rooms. She said no, just that some people belong on camera and some people build the set. My mother inhaled like a person who has just realized the house has been staged but not cleaned. I turned to the boyfriend and asked if he had disclosed all conflicts to the company he was courting. He hesitated a half breath too long. My sister said we didn't need to get technical tonight. I said that sometimes the technical part is the moral part, and the boyfriend laughed like he thought he could grieve that sentence later as a misunderstanding. He asked what I did there exactly at this company he was so excited about. I told him my title in a tone I have learned to use when I'm not apologizing for my competence. The word vice president hit the table like a newly revealed card in a game that people played as children and never learned the adult rules for. The boyfriend blinked in the exact rhythm of a man recalibrating his approach. My sister's hand slid off his arm like a ribbon losing its bow. My mother said my name the way mothers say children's names when they are translating between two worlds. The boyfriend recovered, congratulated me with the earnestness of a man who just found out a door wasn't a door but a mirror. He said it would be amazing to collaborate and that he was confident our synergies would align. My sister stared at me with a kind of awe cracked through with panic, and I could see the equation in her eyes, that all afternoon she had been aiming her life toward a photograph, and now the angle was wrong. I asked him again if he had disclosed all conflicts. He said he believed so, that his agency handled paperwork, that sometimes details got lost when you were moving fast and breaking things. I told him we don't break things at my company. We build them to last. My sister's voice came out small when she asked if this meant Thanksgiving was ruined. I said Thanksgiving was something else entirely, that you can't ruin what you never let be real. My mother finally spoke with the steadiness I remember from the years before we learned to merchandise feelings. She said she was sorry. Not in the way people say sorry to end a scene, but in the way people say sorry because they understand the cost of beauty when it is paid in someone else's dignity. The boyfriend reached for jargon and found none. He said he hoped we could start fresh, and I said we would start correctly. He nodded. My sister asked what that meant. I said it meant that on Monday I would recuse myself from any decision that involved him because fairness is not a strategy, it is a boundary. I said it also meant he should correct his paperwork before compliance, asked him why his last name depended on who was taking the picture. He flushed, then paled, then settled on a color that matched the tablecloth. My mother squeezed my hand again under the table and whispered thank you in the way prisoners of a feeling whisper to the person who finds the key. My sister tried to smile and found the edges wouldn't meet. She asked if we could still get a photo and I laughed because sometimes mercy sounds like a joke. I said we could get a coffee this week with no cameras, and we could talk like people who share a childhood and not a brand. My mother reached for her purse like you reach for a life preserver. I paid the bill before anyone could argue because I wanted to end the night with a clean line. We stood by the glass wall while the city tried to teach us about perspective. My sister hugged me with gratitude and fear and asked if I hated her. I told her I didn't. I told her I hated the lie that told her she had to be perfect to be loved. The boyfriend shook my hand again with a grip that had learned humility in 10 minutes. He said he would be in touch with the updated documents. I told him to be in touch with compliance, not with me. We walked out into the cold, and my mother hooked her arm through mine and said, "Let's go home," the kind of sentence that knows it won't be easy and says it anyway. That night, I lit a candle that smelled like cinnamon and not strategy. I wrote an email to compliance stating my relationship to the candidate and my recusal from the process, and I recommended a third-party review. I CC'd legal. I BCC'd no one. Then I wrote my mother a message for the morning that said, "I want to have you over for leftovers from the park and for conversations that aren't photos." I attached a picture of my paper plate in the sun. Before bed, my sister texted me a photo of our grandmother's recipe card and asked if we could make the pie together in December and talk. I stared at the screen a long time and typed yes. In the morning, I would send her a list of therapists and the name of the best seamstress in town because some tears can be mended and some clothes should just fit the body you have. And on Monday, the candidate would fix his paperwork or he would not, and the process would move as it should without my fingerprints smudging the glass. My life would remain a life, and theirs could become one if they wanted, noisy and a little uncoordinated and perfect in all the ways you can't stage.